The Ryan Ries Show from Southern California. This is The Ryan Ries Show. Post your questions using @Ryan Ries on his Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. Are you ready?
All right, it's going down this Saturday night. I have a couple of my good friends in studio, and you're probably driving right now down the street, or maybe you're quarantined, or who knows, you could be doing anything at this moment, but you are tuned in, and this show's going to be sick because we're going to be talking about faith. And, tonight I was just, I've been like going through these injuries because I'm a skateboarder, and I've been doing these, my stretches, get my stretch on, but it's kind of cool because God uses that time when you're stretching to actually listen to some studies or the Bible, and you just put that audio on, and I'm doing get my yoga on, or not really, but I'm definitely not flexible. but I was just going through the Bible today, and this verse came in First Peter chapter 1. It says, this part just really stood out to me because it's been, if you've listened to the last two shows, it's been a little journey for me in my personal life recently with God, but this thing stuck out to me. It said, "Be truly glad. There's a wonderful joy ahead. Even though you must endure many trials, for a little while, these trials will show that your faith is genuine. It is being tested as fire tests and purifies gold. Through your faith is more precious than pure gold. So when your faith remains strong through many trials, it will bring you much praise and glory and honor on the day Jesus Christ is revealed to you and the whole world." So, there's things that we're all going through at large. Everyone that's listening to this show, you could be tuning in around the world. Obviously, there's a global crisis with COVID, and many people have different beliefs on it. I personally believe it's being blown out of proportion totally. And not only that, obviously you have the mayors that are rebelling against Gavin Newsom right now and saying they're not going to go along with some of the things that he's implementing on California. And then you even have all the sheriffs. The video just came out with Riverside Sheriff, and then there was I think Orange County Sheriff, a couple other sheriffs, and they're just saying, hey, this is crazy. Why is this crazy? Because there's more suicides than corona deaths with the youth, more overdoses with under 18. People are there was one, the sheriff from Riverside County today, he said every job is essential to somebody. Because when you think about this, people set up all these outdoor restaurants. They built these they're basically like these buildings outside the restaurant. And then all of a sudden they're like, that doesn't work. They had to put their life savings in just to get that operated. And now they're shutting everyone down. And people are going to lose their jobs. You lose your job, what happens? You lose your gas money. You lose your car payment. You lose rent. You lose food. What if you got kids? There's so many different, what about debt? Or whatever, just normal life living. There's money that goes out. And I say all that to say this is that there are trials. Everyone's going through some kind of trial at some capacity. And that thing really stood out to me because I felt like, my faith is being tested as a Christian man, my character. And, I was listening to Brother Tony Evans today on the radio, and how he was just saying that, we go through these trials and these tribulations, but what God's doing is sometimes we blame God. God, why are you putting us in this situation? Why are you doing this? But God shows himself not only powerful, but faithful in these moments. Sometimes he sets us up in these things for him to shine. And he was talking about that story of the Israelites, when they left Israel. Well, he took them all the way out. They're like, yeah, we left Israel. And then all of a sudden they're set up and they're stuck in front of the Red Sea. And not the Romans, the Egyptians are coming to slaughter him. But at that moment, he set them up for this. It looked like a failure. But at that moment, that's when Moses basically asked for the water, the sea to open. The storms came, the wind, it dried the ground, and they went through, and God showed himself faithful in that place. But it looked like they were, again, in a very bad scenario. But I want to encourage people with this story, is that you may feel like yourself is in a, sketchy situation, or there's no hope, and, you feel like maybe God's lied to you, or, you don't know what God's doing or he's not around. He is around. He is working. And he's just, it's testing our faith through these trials and tribulations. And we grow in faith and God will show himself faithful. Just remember, he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's always working. He's even working now. And what it comes down to is just tune in. When I say tune in, get plugged in, read, pray, listen to Bible studies. You know, there was a little period of time where I got so busy I just kind of wasn't able to study as much as I normally do or read or pray. And it's so funny, right? When you get back into it, man, you just get charged up and God just starts speaking to you immediately. But it's that connection sometimes that, you know, maybe you're isolated right now or you're depressed because, you know, the new governor's orders or who knows, whatever, holidays, whatever it is. Faith comes from hearing and hearing the word of God. Listen to some studies, listen to some radio shows, read the Bible, and God will speak to you and he'll meet you where you're at. So with that said, we're going to talk about some faith stories tonight. I have Christina. I'm not going to say your name, Christina.
Boudreau. He always butchers my last name. It's okay.
I always ruin it. Christina Boudreau. She's an ambassador of the Whosoever's movement. She's a plus size model. She's done a TED Talk. You've wrote some books. You've done some stuff. Yeah. Anything else that I'm missing? How old are you?
I'm 31.
And your hair is purple, blue. It looks kind of like there's like some green going on up top, but maybe it's
it's just faded. I have to read
turquoise. Looks turquoise.
Yeah.
So I was looking at my computer yesterday.
Yeah.
And there was a photo of all of us at the skate park. Oh, here's your Instagram actually.
Yeah.
And my daughter walks up. Was it Evelyn or Sadie? And she goes, unicorn. I'm like, yeah, that's Christina. Yeah. So, yeah, it's awesome. So she's in studio. And then I got Daniel. He's in studio. He's our team manager tour manager for the Whosoevers and runs all of our social media and does a lot of other things. But I wanted to bring you guys in to talk about our trip to Taft.
Yeah.
We went to Taft, California last week. We got invited. Do you know what kid it was that ended up committing suicide, the 13-year-old? Jason Sheldon. Tell the listening audience a little bit about Jason.
Yeah, he was part of that Taft community and part of a pretty big family actually, and they were there the entire weekend. But it was just something that affected the entire community. It wasn't that long before we went there that Jason actually ended up committing suicide. He was 13 years old. Just part of that Taft community, and that's when the family was hurting and the whole community felt it. And so Max actually, he just was wondering what could he do to help the community, and just ended up calling us out and just like inviting us down there just to, come speak to the people, speak to the kids, and just get us out there for the community that was hurting.
And what's funny is Max was actually on my radio show last week. We got to have him in here and share his story a little bit. But I thought it was that's why I wanted to bring you guys in to kind of share some of the stories, which we didn't go into any of the stories really last week.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of have you guys come in and break it all down. But it's pretty crazy. This kid, a little bit of background about this kid, he was getting bullied online classes. And, these girls that were talking to him on the online learning saying, no, you're stupid. He had like a little bit of autism. And this kid was just very nice, always wanted to hug people and help people and really cared about how people were doing. We saw some photos of him, some video and stuff. But these mean kids online, this girl was like, you're stupid, no one likes you, and you can just go commit suicide, go kill yourself. And over a series of events of those same things happening, he decided to take his life. But it affected the community, and we were able to go up there. But go ahead, Christina, talk a little bit about what the squad looked like and what, how the first day went for you.
Yeah, so we actually had a really cool crew going up. We had like Tom Gollaz, who was with us in Boise. He's a pro snowboarder. We had Austin Carlisle, former lead singer of Mice and Men. We had Sonny. We all know Sonny. There's Ryan, Daniel. We had Justice, Sonny's son, who's really cool. We had Israel. His whole head is a dread. Really cool guy. Does like skateboarding stuff in Ethiopia. And we had what's that one guy's name that does stuff up in Calabasas?
Calabasas? Who was that?
Isaac.
Isaiah. It was Isaiah.
Isaiah. Yeah.
I always think of him Orange County.
Yeah. Okay.
Isaiah.
I think before going to Taft, the only thing that I had heard about Taft is that it was like a small oil town. And I feel like this year we've gone to a lot of like small towns. And it's every time you go to a small town that the Lord does a really big work. And when we showed up to Taft, I think we didn't really know like what to expect. Like sometimes you kind of know the dynamics of an area and the culture, but we didn't really know. And the first night we walked into the church gym, and there was like, I think from what Sonny said, like 150 kids that were there that night. I'm not good with numbers, but that was the number that he had mentioned. And I remember walking up and just seeing these girls in the front row, and they were talking about how they had like a homemade tattoo maker, and they were like tattooing each other, just like really rough around the edges kids, really colorful. And I just remember that night, like the Lord really just putting on my heart, like, and the interesting thing about this place was that there was kids from the age of like 5, like the little guys, all the way up until like high school, like even early college, and then there was parents. So, I was just like, okay, like how do we like talk about these things, but with not overexposing the young ones? But I felt like that night, at least when it was like my turn to share, the Lord was like, I need you to talk about like all of the hard things. Like sexual abuse, rape, depression, cutting, suicide, eating disorders. And I was like, this is kind of heavy, dude, for a church crowd. But I felt like the Lord was like, don't hold back. So in the beginning, I was like, I'm going to use broad terms. I didn't use broad terms, but.
Hey, just to back up what you're saying, that crowd was very unique.
Yeah.
As in like you said, colorful, a lot of colored hair.
Yeah.
Rough crowd, homemade tattoos.
Yeah.
Transgender.
Yeah.
It was. I felt like I was like at the Vans Warped Tour or something.
Yeah.
Like that was like the most interesting youth group church crowd. Was it youth group? I mean, I don't even know.
No, these kids were just all from the community.
It was like more like a community event.
Yeah, it was like a community event. And it was so interesting because like even before going, like just kind of backstory, last year I had lived in the same house as a person that raped me growing up for about a year, and living with and having to be in the same house as that person and living with the effects of that. And I remember last year, Ryan, as you were talking about, like, is God like doing a sick joke on me, right? Like, is like, why am I going through this? And I remember last year being like, God, like, why did I have to go through this? Like, I remember like even when I had to live with this family member, I still, because they had just gotten out of jail, it was like this whole thing. I literally remember being like, dude, I don't even want to be at home. So I remember like always being gone. If I didn't have stuff going on, I would be at the movies, I would be at the coffee shop. Yeah. But as I'm thinking of this year with these kids, so many kids are at home right now with abusers, they're at home in a domestic violence situation, but they don't have anywhere to go. And I remember like right before we went to Taft, I had actually just moved to Thousand Oaks to be a part of Calvary Chapel Godspeak and the community up there. And because this abuser moved back into my parents' house, and at this point, the Lord was like, it's not now time for you to leave. And I remember waking up one day and the Lord just really putting on my heart, like, I'm going to use what you went through last year to speak into the lives of these kids. So that first night, the Lord just really had me like go hard on that, like on sexual abuse, rape, like cutting, depression, suicide. And literally like we were there for probably 2 to 3 hours after the event ended. I counted, I had almost 50 kids come up to me after. And these kids were all between the ages of 10 to 15, 16, 17 years old. And all of them had stories of abuse, rape, cutting, depression, suicide. There was not one kid that came up to me that didn't have a story. And all these kids had stories of saying like, we've had CPS at our house since COVID has happened. We've had like child protective services. We've had to go to group homes, like, and the Lord really showing me like Christina, like, and all of these kids, literally, there was like a group of girls that were like, dude, we had to run out in the middle of your story because it was just so hard for us to hear.
I was there. I was right by the bathroom, and this girl, you were talking about stuff, she got up bawling and took off running. Yeah. And like passed in front of everyone, ran to the bathroom and was crying.
Yeah, yeah. And the best way that I could the best way that I could describe that night was that if you guys were to think of like a dam, of water, like these kids' hearts were like that dam of water, and they just had all of this pain and brokenness bottled up. And I felt like that night the dam broke, and like all of it came like spilling forward. And it was like all the pain, all the brokenness, all these things these kids went through. I felt like I just like stood there for 2.5 to 3 hours after the event as all these kids, just kid after kid, just word vomited on me, sharing with me just all this stuff. They were like, dude, everything you said is my story and my life. And I just prayed with kid after kid after kid. And it was that night that the Lord was like, Christina, everything that you've gone through, like I'm now using for my glory.
Yep.
And so just to encourage people out there that was just a glimpse of the first night that God used the pain of what I had to walk through last year in the lives of these kids that night. And whatever you're going through this year, like God's not playing some sick joke on you. Like he doesn't just put you through things to just, laugh and be like, oh, I hope you make it through. Even the life of Job, like God brought Job through that so he can bring him out of it. And I saw like a meme today that actually sent to our like Whosoever's team. And it was like a funny meme. Sometimes I scroll through, but it literally said Satan thought he had taken everything from Job, but to Job, God was his everything. And I really love that because last year, even just, talking about like how right now we're hearing on the news, like if you stay at home, you save lives. But the truth is, most of these kids right now staying at home, even the kids we met that first night, it's not saving their life. It's going to take their life.
Yep, exactly.
Because the effects, the reason why I recently moved from my home situation to Thousand Oaks was because I told my family, I said, if I live in this situation anymore, I said, my PTSD is going to get bad. Like the effects of these kids staying at home with abusers and unhealthy situations, they're going to deal with those mental health issues for the rest of their life. And so what we are seeing now is the effects of what a year of lockdown has done to these kids. And literally all the kids that came up to me all rolled up their sleeves, had cuts up their arms. These were little guys,
Yeah, I know.
So that was a kind of a recap of the first night.
What was your response, Daniel, from you being there? Because this is interesting, this tour. Normally we do the mega tours, and they're like 10 days, 30 to 36 events. This was a short tour, 2 days. How many events? 6 events or 4 days?
Probably like 6 events, something like
It
that.
was like 5 or 6 events. But we had the mega tour lineup.
It was so many people.
We had everyone, all the ambassadors and friends showed up. So we had the biggest group for the smallest amount of events. But one of the this event was pretty crazy. Or this town, Taft, T-A-F-T, California. It's about like an hour west of like Bakersfield.
Bakersfield, yeah.
In
Yeah,
case
well,
people don't know.
Yeah, no, it was crazy because I feel like that was a huge blessing to the people of Taft that all the people of the ambassadors from the Whosoevers came through because, like you said, there was just so much going on with that crowd. I can just see, just watching the crowd, that there was so many different characters, so many different people there, and the kids there and families. The families came too, and they were just crowding the room. And I just feel like for all the speakers that went up there, Sonny spoke at the beginning, just sharing his heart as a father, and Christina sharing what you went through. Ryan, you went up and prayed. Tom even prayed with them. He spoke at the end, and I feel like they just were able to absorb everything from what they had gone through, their own personal lives and the community feeling what happened with Jason. And I remember, Ryan, you sent a link into the Whosoever's chat from something that happened recently. It was on a Zoom thing with at a school. Or actually, Christina, you sent that. It was a California elementary student actually killed himself during a Zoom class.
Oh, yeah.
And the entire school, the class was on it, and the entire school is feeling that too. And so just all these, suicides, like you're saying, kids at home not helping. And so this entire community that was there that night, all dealing with that, feeling it. And for all you guys to come through, you can just see that, they were a tough crowd. Everyone's rowdy at the beginning. It looks like they don't want to listen. They're kind of too cool to be there. But once you start talking about the real stuff is when they start to tune in and they start to mellow down and listen. And when you pray and ask if people want to pray and go up and be healed and open up about those things, you start to see the crowd, the ones in the back that kind of look hard, they got up. They got up and went forward.
With what you just said, because when we come in, it's funny because when we went into this event, it's this big gymnasium, and Justice, Sonny's kids, just because we're unloading the sound and stuff, and he's like, what are we going to do? I'm like, we're about to start a party up in here.
Yeah.
He's like, what? Because he hasn't been on a Whosoever's tour, the Kill the Noise. And we started pulling out the banners, with all the crazy, colorful graphics. He's like, what? And then all of a sudden, we're sitting at the sound booth, just piggybacking off what you said. Yeah. I think me and you were at the sound booth, right? I think it was
Yeah,
us.
just putting it the playlist.
Yeah, yeah. All of a sudden we put, some dubstep on or whatever, and all of a sudden the place turned into a frenzy, and the mascot came out, and the party started, right? And they
Yeah.
were hyped.
Yeah.
But then you went up first, or it was Sonny.
Sunny, yeah.
No, Sonny went up and started dropping it. He got real serious because they were all out at first, but then he just started getting real, like just straight up, and then it was just like quiet. And then you came up, and then I came up, and Tom, and it was just, dude. Then it was heavy, and everyone was just bawling.
Yeah.
Bawling. I've never seen in like when you call everyone, people call them altar calls, but like when people call everyone up to pray together, dude, they were like weeping, like crying, like God was just moving. And before we go to day 2, I got this picture right here that I want to this girl right here, with the girl that's throwing the crystal away. Do you remember that one? So. Also, funny enough, the first day when we showed up to set up, the first people we saw was this girl, and there was a guy with them, and she had this crystal around her neck, and I was like, okay, what's she into, whatever. And anyway, very long story short, over the weekend of her being at all the events and us loving on them or whatever, she ended up, someone prayed for her, someone on our crew prayed for her, and she got healed. She had like these crazy chronic pains going through her back and her legs. And I guess she bent over to like stretch or whatever at the end of the trip, and she got healed, and she screamed, and her cousin's like, "What the heck?" She's like, "God's grace," and she's like, "What?" And basically, long story short, she got healed, and that's what led her to the Lord. But she was into like, I don't know if she was like into transgender or she was transgender. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff. She was in this youth group, but there was a lot of stuff going on with her. Mentally and spiritually, I guess I would say spiritually. And dude, God got a hold of her life. And then I remember when we were driving back, they told me everything that happened. And I said, hey, I told the pastor, I said, hey, tell her to get that crystal around her neck, take it off and throw it in the trash. So they sent this picture. Some of you guys that are watching the video, this is her with the crystal, and she's throwing it in the trash can. How epic is that? It doesn't get better than that. So anyway, and this is the first girl we met the first night. Yeah. So anyway, sometimes God just puts a thumbprint on someone, like you walk in and you see someone, and you're like, something's going to happen with that person, we'll just wait. But anyway, that was the first night. But at the end of the trip, is when she gave her life to the Lord. Yeah. So then what did we do after the first night besides eat tacos?
We ate tacos, we partied. Yeah, we the next day we just had breakfast. Everyone just came together and just met everyone. I think that's when we heard a bit of Max's testimony when he was telling us.
Oh yeah, that was the breakfast. That's right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and also just to mention too about Taft is that before we arrived that night, like none of us knew that this 13-year-old boy had committed suicide.
Yeah.
We didn't know like the type of community that Taft was, but we found out after that first night. The pastor was like, did you know this community is filled with abuse and addiction and broken homes? Because it's kind of like in the middle of like, nowhere.
It's like a farm town, I think.
Yeah. It's kind of in an area where like it was almost like when we were in Great Falls, Montana. It's an area where there's just a lot of brokenness because sometimes people in those areas, everywhere, it's just like a lot of drugs, addiction, a lot of like interesting people. And I remember even Max pointing down a couple streets. He's like, yeah, there's like shootings there and there's like gangs and there's just like all this stuff. And it's like you would never know. And even the first night too, I wanted to talk about this. There was this boy that came up to us that we found out that who was 11 years old actually, that we talked to, who said that he had just gotten out of the hospital because he was suicidal. And it was because he said he was falling behind in his Zoom assignments at school, that he got so overwhelmed, this 11-year-old boy, that he just, became suicidal. And he was like, I can't do it anymore. And so that's like the reality of what a lot of these kids are going through, Like you have kids that are at home who are falling behind in their assignments, who are maybe having to pick up the Wi-Fi at some like coffee shop down the street because their home is filled with like alcohol and drug addiction. And they're falling behind in their assignments. And even this kid came from a really good home. And that's one thing I want to highlight too. Not everyone that struggles comes from crazy homes. We've met kids that come from great homes, but who are still struggling with suicide and depression, like this kid. Yeah. And so this kid came from a great home, and so, we just got a chance to pray with him and encourage him. And so that's one thing we've seen this year, especially in Taft, is that It doesn't matter whether you're from a good home or bad home. We see kids across the board struggling with suicide and depression and mental illness.
There is actually, I just looked it up, Taft population. There's 9,285 people there.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty small town. At that same night, I had a girl come up to me. Here's a perfect example of this stuff that they're dealing with. There was a girl at the end that came up for prayer after, and she used to mess with, meth and, weed and alcohol and stuff. So she's sober now. She's 19 years old. But she said, pray for me because I have to go back home. I'm living at my house. And she's trying to find a way to move out of her house. But she said her mom's on crystal and crack and heroin and all this stuff. And her brother, everyone parties, everyone's using drugs, but she has to go back and she has to live in that environment. And she can't get out. And it's
very sad.
You don't even realize what's going on in these little small towns and how God's been taking us to these small towns. And it's been powerful. I don't know. I'm hooked on going to the small towns now.
Because people show up. It's good vibes. People
come out. They don't have anything going on. And they're going through some stuff, and it's just really cool to be hanging out. Hey, what did Jesus do? It says he went from town to town, city to city. It even says villages. These are like villages. So epic. All right, well, we're going to be going to a break in a minute, and then we're going to continue with day 2 because we only did 2 days, right? 3 days.
3 days.
3 days. All right, well, check this out. Go ahead and check out the whosoevers.com. We have a bunch of new products. When you buy our products, you're repping the movement. And when I say repping the movement, we're the movement's like the Great Commission. That's what we do. We're gospel gangsters. We go out and bring the gospel everywhere we go. We literally read the scriptures of Jesus, what him and his disciples did, and we do exactly what he's called us to do, and that's it. And it's to go to town, city to city, in the village to village. And we work with local churches. So when we went to Taft, we worked with the local church up there. Reached kids for Christ, plugged them into church, got kids actually plugged into church, and that's kind of how the movement operates. We work together with local ministries in those areas. We toured the skate parks, going to juvenile detention centers, high schools, middle schools, grammar schools, colleges, universities, pretty much anywhere God will get us in front of people. That's basically what we do, but we want to be in front of the youth. That's our main focus, is to be in front of students, wherever students are, because they're the ones that, to be frank, a lot of people really don't care about the students. A lot of ministries don't. You know why? Because there's no money in it. They're like, well, if we just go and reach the adults, adults have money, adults can tithe, but that's how sad, really, the sadness is. But what's our whole focus is? It's the youth. It's the youth. We're going to keep going to the kids. We're going to keep going to the high schools. We're going to keep going to the middle schools. We're going to keep going to wherever they're at because they're left for dead. No one cares. They think they're unreachable, but they are so reachable. The harvest is so ripe. It's insane. They're just waiting with open arms for you to show up. And if they know if you come in authentically and genuinely, or should I say more genuine, authentic, just don't be a poser. Just be who you are. But go in and love people right where they're at. And if they know that you really care about them, dude, the conversations are endless. I just got off a phone call. We're going to go to break in like 30 seconds. But I just got off a phone call with a kid from a juvenile detention center from Montana, Great Falls. You were with us there. Yeah. He got our number through Instagram. I called him up, and he's like, hey, man, I just want you to know, man, prayer works. I'm the guy that was in there locked up for drugs because me and my dad got in trouble for selling drugs. Anyway, I got out. I got a job. I'm plugged into church. God got me, basically his whole life is transformed, and he's walking with God. And I got to talk to him for like 30 minutes. It was sick.
Awesome.
But this is what we do, And people go, well, was there a discipleship program set up? No. We just went into the juvenile detention centers. We prayed. We shared the gospel. We prayed for him. And God, by the Holy Spirit, drew him to himself. And he got out and kept leading him and guiding him. As the scripture says, the Holy Spirit will do. And now the dude's plugged into church. It is what it is. But you could downside. You could be the flip side and be like, oh, well, was he plugged into a church? No, he wasn't. But God got him plugged in. Mm-hmm. We'll be back in 2 minutes, right after the break, to hear more epic stories coming from Daniel and Christina on our Taft, California trip. Peace.
More of The Ryan Ries Show coming up. Post your questions at Ryan Ries on his Instagram, Twitter, and or Facebook. Now, back to the Ryan Ries Show.
All right, we are back, and I have Christina in studio and Danielson in studio talking about Taft, or Whosoever's Taft, California trip, which was epic. So, first night, they brought in the community. Jason, the 13-year-old boy, he committed suicide, so they called Whosoever's in to come in and speak to the community, and we did. And it was pretty crazy. Again, like I said, if you're just tuning in, we normally go in with a few different ambassadors, and we'll do a mega tour. So we'll do like 10 days, 30 to 36 events. This trip was 2 days, 4 or to 6 events. I think I don't even remember. It was like 5 to 6 events. But we had Daniel, Christina, me, Austin, the lead singer of A Mice and Men, Sonny Sandoval, lead singer PUD. Our friend Isaiah came in. Tom, pro snowboarder. Do we have anyone else? Well, that's 8 right there. And then everyone else that showed up. I mean, it was crazy, but it was awesome getting everyone together, just hanging out, and God used everyone to speak. And it was just, and Izzy from Ethiopia even showed up. He's been on the radio show as well. But so second day, it's our big day. We do breakfast, and it's like skate park day. It's like the fun, like it's going to be epic. Skate park, best trick contests are always epic, right?
Oh, yeah.
What happened? What was your experience there? Were the kids ready?
They were more than ready. They were actually there the day we got there just to check in the hotel. The kids were already at the we went to check out the skate park. Mm-hmm. Kids were already at the skate park like, oh, you guys are here already? Like, we're ready for it tomorrow. There was like 20 kids there.
Already
ready.
Yep.
A bunch of kids. So we show up day of the skate park event, and it's like another part of the crowd from the previous night. Wild, crazy. They were loud. They were all mixed. And then so more kids at this one because they're all skaters and they got the families. Just everyone just come together and they're all wild. So you already knew it was about to go down.
So what is it for the listeners? What is it? What's a skate park look like? What's a skate park event look like for the Whosoevers?
Well, basically, we'll show up like an hour early to set up. We actually got a sound system at this one, so we're setting up. Park guys are helping out. They're awesome. But it looks like we show up early. We're just there hanging out, and there's already a bunch of kids, bunch of rippers, just setting up. They're already like, oh, what are you guys doing? And we just let them know while we're there. We're just going to do a best trick contest and give out $100, give out some products, so stick around. So
it's basic, right?
Yeah,
it's not like this, because when people think, oh, you got to set up this contest or this big event, they think it's this huge production. Like when we say sound system, we've used just like a a monitor speaker before, just some kind of tunes. And most of the times we don't even have.
We have a megaphone.
We have a megaphone. That's the party
Literally
jam.
just show up
That's
with a
all we show up
megaphone.
with.
All you really need is a megaphone because we haven't been using sound systems. I'm glad you brought that up. We haven't been using sound systems because we've been just showing up to the tours without any permits because, the whole, who knows what's going on with the laws of the land these days.
It's changing so much.
But the gospel must go forth. So, But, yeah, the megaphone is the key and $100 for the best trick. And that's what gets the party started. It's literally that simple. So megaphone, $30, which you could buy on Amazon.
Yeah.
And then you get your $100 on.
Yeah.
And, dude, it's packed and kids are breaking themselves. They're just going for it.
Yeah, and one thing that was interesting about Taft is that Max was telling me that their skate park was closed up until our skate event. And because of that boy, what was the boy's name again, Daniel?
Jason Sheldon.
Because Jason Sheldon, it was actually in October that he committed suicide. And we were there in November, which is like a month later. Because Jason Sheldon committed suicide, the city actually opened up the skate park for us, cleared it out, and invited us, gave us permits to do this skate event. And they decided to open up the schools in their community for at least 2 or 3 hours a day because they said, we don't want this to happen to any more kids. So the reason why all those kids were there, even that Friday that we got there, is because that was the first time they've probably skated their park since February of this year. So these kids are so excited. Like, some of them had some really gnarly looking boards. It looks like they just took a piece of wood and put some wheels on it. So we had a couple boards. We were giving boards away, and it really was like the whole community showing up. Obviously there was people skating, but people were just excited just to, any time you start, say for example, when people are stranded on an island, what do they build to get people's attention? They build a bonfire, right?
Right.
And I felt because that fire gets the attention of whatever, and it's the same thing with our event. It was literally we set a bonfire in the middle of their community, and that was a light in the darkness they haven't seen in a long time, and everyone just came because they saw that there was hope, there was connection, we were loving on people. We gave out free product that day. We were high-fiving. I saw Austin. He was connecting with kids the whole time. Sonny was, Izzy was. Isaiah was just ripping the whole time. We were all just hanging out, and all the kids we saw the night before were there too. Mm-hmm. So it's we got to hear more of their stories and how they looked the first night, very solemn, very just sad. The next day was just light was in their eyes. There was joy, and joy is something you can't buy. Yeah. Even where I live right now in Thousand Oaks, it's right next to Calabasas, and people there have money, okay? And when I look into the eyes of people at the grocery stores or even the malls, or if I drive down to Malibu to go to the beach, I see people get out of Rolls Royce cars, and when I look into their eyes because they wear a mask, or you can still see their eyes, I don't see joy in people's eyes. I see no life, but it's only Christ that can truly bring joy. And so with these kids, what God gave them that night and that day at the skate park was something that no money could buy them.
Yes, with that said, when you have a lot of money, when people have a lot of money, unless you just inherited a bunch of money and you didn't have to work for it, and you're okay, cool, I got a bunch of money. But if you're a hard worker and you have to create that revenue, dude, there's so much stress. That's why I see these guys that are millionaires or billionaires or whatever that are working day and night, and they're stressing, and there's just so much stress. They're not happy. They have all this money, but they have to figure out how to hold it and keep it and not lose it and keep investing it. And just from the outside, it looks great. Yeah, you got whatever you're driving, I don't know, Bentleys or whatever they're driving, you got this huge house, but they're working crazy hours, stressed out, not doing too good, Yeah. So it's just all it's the whole lie of the enemy. Having money, and that's all great. Go if you want to be successful, that's awesome. There's successful people. God's made businessmen, but it's when it dominates, the life. That
when you look to that for your joy.
Yeah, exactly.
When you look to money or rely on money for your joy. Because even, this is a segue, but even where I'm at, even though I serve at the youth group, I serve at the young adults junior and high school at my church at Godspeed Calvary. And I'm meeting young adults, junior high and high school kids who have very wealthy parents. But it doesn't mean that these kids are happy. Like a lot of them are just like, yeah, I don't really see my parents, or
Because they're working all
because
day.
they're working
Exactly.
a lot, or they have these kids wear Yeezys, you know, like these $300 shoes, like have the latest phones. But even as I look into a lot of these people's eyes, I'm just like, dude, like joy is something that can't be bought, and that's something that we've seen, especially at our tour in Taft,
with those kids.
that God gave the greatest gift that I think people have needed this year, which is joy.
And what was awesome too, after just seeing those kids' faces and everything, then the final event that we did was at the church. So we did a first service, which was like an adults. I think you and Sonny spoke at the first service, and then the second service was a bunch of kids. Like it was more like the youth second service, which was
Tom and Austin.
Where did I speak? Oh, I did at the end. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the third event was more of like the panel, but all the kids and people were coming from the skate parks, even guys that were showing up that weren't even any of the other events that the local skaters were giving their life to the Lord. And there were some cool testimonies. Like the wife ended up texting the pastor, getting home and said, "What'd you guys tell my husband?" He's like reading like the Bible now and wanting to go to church and all this crazy stuff. There was a Holy Spirit bomb dropped in that city. And that's what God does. You just show up and then he does what he wants to do. And that was what's going on. And I'm just looking forward to seeing what God wants to do with next, you know. Right now in this time, like right now, like they're trying to shut stuff down. We're in this crazy election recount and possibly martial law to do a vote, or Joe Biden's going to get in. And right now is just a very, very interesting time, but we can't get focused on all that stuff. We got to stay focused on like Jesus, the gospel, because that stuff never changes. With all those things on top that are causing like the issues, like you got the pandemic, news, you got the government, you got the presidents, no schools, you have all this stress, no jobs, no work, all this stuff. What that's doing, as how it's affecting people. This is why it's so important that we right now, what we do is to bring the gospel and get in front of people and let them know that God loves them and he wants to encounter them. He wants to forgive them and he wants to give them peace and that joy that you're talking about. Right now is the most important time to do this. So as us as Christians, and I'll let you guys speak into this, but right now is not the time to be like, oh my gosh, like I texted you a group text earlier today, right? So like right now, everything's like supposed to be in lockdown in California, curfews and all this stuff. And my text to you guys was like, hey, right now, dude, California, the harvest is ripe. We should just get out and just hit it hard, like in the next month or whatever. Like we got to think spiritually like this. You got to think about opportunity. Now's the opportunity. If people are in a crisis, now's the opportunity.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? You got anything to add about that? Think it's a good idea?
Definitely. Yeah, because I mean, just from what we've seen from the whole Taft tour of like the kids being stuck in their homes, and then to see them come together as a community, like he said and mentioned about coming out to the skate park or whatever it was, the youth night too, the church event, to see people come together, come out of their homes and just be around each other and not be afraid, but more to have joy and be just together as a community. That's what's important for the people and for the students, the kids, because they're the future. You keep saying to go to the youth, because they're the ones that are growing up that are going to lead this country in the future. So those are the ones that we need to reach, and those are the ones that we need to bring together. They need to be around each other. The young people need to be around each other, and they're the ones that have all that joy. They bring all that joy when they come. So for us to get there, it's just super important to just get in front of them, tell them the truth about Jesus, tell them the truth about joy and love instead of all this stuff about lockdown and quarantine and all this other stuff and taking schools from them. So they're just like, they need to hear something that's not about all that other stuff. They need to hear some truth.
Do you think that, like from your experience, Daniel, do you think that they've been pretty receptive, like overall, like when you're seeing them like talking to different people like on tour and stuff?
Yeah,
like
definitely.
the response, it's not. Is it a few, or do you see like it's more like the majority?
Like majority for sure, and it's always been like a lot of people, but I think because of quarantine, because of all this stuff, like the things that have been taken away from them, their ability to go out and hang out, their ability to go to school and be with their friends. I think they're just appreciating it even more that someone would come to their communities, would come to them and tell them that they're loved and tell them about Jesus, or just just be there for them. I think they appreciate it that much more, and it's just something that's so like needed for them.
You're getting bigger turnouts probably now, huh? Because no everyone wants to get out. There's nothing to do.
Exactly.
So you're like local skate park. Boom. We might have to incorporate like hot dogs,
Yeah, just
barbecue.
Yeah.
Because we don't have no. We had pizza or something last time, right?
We had pizza.
Hot dogs would be a fun vibe though. You know.
They didn't even know there was food. They just came.
I didn't even know there was food. I just saw the pizza show up.
Yeah.
But that'd be kind of sick to kind of like make it a little bit funner, cool environment. Get the local church to come out and start flipping burgers and hot dogs. That would also be a nice little addition.
Yeah.
The hot dog jam. Best trick
for a hot dog.
hot dog ollie, go over the full send over the boards and grab the hot dog in the air.
Yeah.
Dude, that was gnarly. So what about you, Christina? You got anything to say about this, what you're thinking right now during these times?
Yeah, I remember even just seeing about like the pastor of the church I attend is Pastor Rob McCoy, and he's been traveling a lot with like Charlie Kirk and has been involved in the political scene, and the community that I'm a part of up there is just very involved in that way, which is really cool. And even like every day, like we hear just updates of what's happening, like on the legal side, on the political side, just from like the top down. And honestly, there's days where I get very discouraged, where I'm like, Lord, like I even went to bed last night and I was like, Lord, this is really dark times, dude. I was like, I don't know if, just seeing all this, the news about, the lockdowns and all these posts people are doing of like, oh, like curfew and shutdowns. And I'm just like, wow. And of course, people post the funny memes of like only one toilet paper being left. And they're like, are we really doing this again?
Yeah.
Like
I haven't seen that one. That's a good
people
one.
are like, seriously. And I just, I really went to bed last night and I was like, Lord, like, this is crazy, but I think, I woke up this morning with just a sense of hope of really just believing that God, you knew that this was going to happen. And it's like, when you think of like a dance battle, it's like team A goes and they kind of do their moves. And then they're like, oh, okay, is that all you got? And then team B goes, like World of Dance does that. And then they can like blow them out of the water. I feel like the Lord, this has been just like a crazy dance battle between like heaven and hell has just run rampant, dude. Everything they could throw our way. Churches getting exposed. You have like people in government being exposed. You have pedophilia. You have rioting. You have all this stuff. And I just have a sense, only the Lord knows that the Lord's going to be like, my turn. And that he has something so awesome up his sleeve. Because when you think of who Christ is, what he did on the cross, and just how he literally defeated hell in 3 days, right? Like all the armies of hell completely defeated. Because of his resurrection, we have victory. I'm just wondering, because this has been a year of exposure, if God's just going to like stop midway and be like, oh, like I'm just going to like let evil run rampant. But when you look at countries, like when I was in India in January of this year, they have an extremely like demonic government with like the Hindu like group. But,
I believe that. With all
it's
demon
crazy.
gods.
But their church they're Christians. They're average Christian. Like a new believer probably knows the scripture and is probably more strong in the Holy Spirit than most pastors I know, because they have to be.
In that environment,
Yeah. And I look at this year and I'm like, Lord. And I remember coming back from India and being like, man, I need to get some of those people here. Like, I need to get some of those people on my team. But and looking at this year, I remember talking to our friends Cynthia and Roger, I do this like Zoom Bible study thing with them once a week. And I remember talking to Cynthia one week and the girls that we do this thing with. And I was like, you know what? If our church here and if our believers here, as a result of this year, are going to look like the believers in India, like strong in the word, strong in faith, like standing up for our rights to like worship. That's one thing I really appreciate about Godspeak, is that they have like, we don't do social distancing or masks at church. Every Sunday, 3 services filled, dude. Like people from like the age of 90 to like 9 and 9 months. People are just worshiping. And I think when I walked in, when I visited a few months ago before moving, I looked to my friends, Pastor Craig and Lauren Link was there, and I just was like, you guys are so on fire. They started Calvary Chapel in Tebe in Uganda.
Okay. Never mind.
Yeah, they're like missionaries. They're awesome. And I just remember they're now on staff at Godspeak though. But I just remember looking to them and I was like, this reminds me of the church in India. And they said, Godspeak reminds us of our church in Africa because it's so alive because we've had to fight for our right to worship.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think during this time, the Church of Christ in America has really fought for her freedom and her right to worship, but also our right to just go out and preach the gospel. And I believe that this time to do a tour in California, hit skate parks, reach the youth, like people are hurting, like the harvest is ripe.
Yeah.
It's like time,
especially in California.
Yeah.
I've been just waiting,
Yeah.
because we've been touring around, and I'm like we're gonna hit California, but it's not yet. It's not ready yet.
Yeah.
But now you could see how governors are, not the governor, the mayors and the sheriffs and everyone are like, no, we're not enforcing. So that means, and people are like, we're not closing down. We're gonna, people are rebelling in a sense of like they're like, okay, we're following the science of it and stuff. These orders are just, you're destroying lives basically.
Yeah.
Gavin Newsom is just by what he's doing, what he's calling people to do, which he doesn't obey any of it. Big hypocrite,
Yeah.
But with that said, that means you could go into the skate parks. You can go into these places, and we don't have to worry about the cops or anyone doing anything. So
Yeah.
now's the time. Call the kids out, get them there, do a fun contest, cook some hot dogs, and bring the gospel.
Yeah.
And get them plugged into the local churches.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
So
That's what we
simple
do.
right now.
Yeah. And kids are hungry. Like everywhere we've gone, even when I think I saw it first when we went to Boise, like in July.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, we had parents coming up to us who are like, thank you, our kids needed this. Because what happened in March of this year? You took away school, you took away sports, you took away friends, you took away extracurricular activities, whatever. Kids are left with what? Their phones, their iPads, and their computers and TVs.
I'll destroy you.
Yeah, completely destroyed you. So, like, all of these parents now are trying to figure out how are we going to work? How are we going to pay our bills? They're so stressed out. So to have something to bring their kids to just see it. I literally have had parents come up to me and they've said, like, we haven't seen our kids smile and laugh like this and had this much fun in a long time.
Dang.
Yeah.
See, we got to do it.
That
Yeah.
Screen time.
We got
they're
it.
just
Well,
losing.
yeah, it's just eating them away. So we have, I'm trying to think here. So we're in December right now. So we start planning now, and we just hit it strong come January 2021. Just coming out
Year of revival.
swinging. Yeah.
Daniel's
Skating.
like, let's
Right,
go.
yeah.
Yeah, skate tours.
That's just a good, because, once you book the skate tours, then everything else kind of piggybacks off that. Then the churches invite you in, youth groups, whatever, juvenile detention centers or whatever works. But the skate park's good because it's a community event. That's why we need hot dogs.
Yeah.
Hot dogs and hamburgers, you will get some people out there.
Just get everyone.
Yeah.
Whole
So if there's any local restaurants in California that want to donate food for our events,
Some dogs.
We're gonna have to get some rich restaurants because everyone's like trying to stay in business right now.
That's true.
That's called In-N-Out Burger.
yeah,
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A.
Does anyone know how to do that? Kanye?
Chick-fil-A?
Chick-fil-A. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Look at Lucas is over there licking his lips back there in the back room when we said the Chick-fil-A.
Lucas is ready to go.
He's
Yup,
ready.
The
Yeah,
communities
well-
are ready.
Yeah. Well, even Ryan, even when you think about what God did in Montana, right? In Great Falls. Dude, we went into community, right? Just chill community, awesome people. Their whole community showed up for this event. We didn't even technically have permits, but it's like the maintenance people helped us set up this full thing. We probably had 250 to 300 people at that event.
Montana, that party was popping.
Yeah.
And we had burgers. Or
Yeah.
hot dogs or something.
It was the dogs.
I think we had both.
Yeah.
And we were in the news.
And the news picked it up. The
Yeah.
local news picked it up.
They did in Florida too. They picked
Florida
it up.
too. Dude, I'm telling you, this is, it's funny because I think we're gonna end the show here in about 2 minutes or something. But I was literally like at my house thinking, I'm like, dude, this is so trippy. Because like when the Whosoever started, we're doing music festivals. Like I've been producing music festivals, right? So that was natural. Then from there, we started going in. Later on, we started going. We were doing tours with bands, and then we went into the schools where they were at. And then all of a sudden, everything gets shut down. And then all of a sudden, we were forced to do skate contests. And
park.
I've been a skater my whole life,
Yeah.
so obviously you guys skate too. But then I'm like, dude, God, it's so funny how God uses skateboarding basically. For all the events we've been doing the last tours, he's been using skateboarding. People are like, when you think about ministry, oh man, to be used in ministry, what am I, what do I have to offer? I'm a skateboarder. I'm going to a skate park. It's not nothing. There's no like big, like, boom, I had this like moment that I became this evangelist and I brought, put together this whole production. No, I'm like, I'm going to go with $100 to a skate park and we're going to let people know we're coming. And God uses just this little thing that I've been doing, this stick with these wheels since I was 7 years old. And now he's using this right now in the middle of the pandemic for, bringing the gospel to like thousands of kids. So that's so crazy.
It's so crazy. Like just how everything has been changing. It's like God has been changing the movement too to adapt to what's going on so that we can reach the kids.
Hey, isn't that nuts?
It's crazy.
It's so nuts. He's just been completely just adapting it and moving it, and it hasn't stopped. And we won't stop. And we're not going to stop. We're going to keep going. So keep us in your prayer for the Whosoevers. We're going to keep touring. California, here we come. January, you heard it here first. It's going down. January 21, the year of revival. And I quote Christina. So keep us in prayer. And if you guys want to help us fund our mission, that would be sick as well. You can go to thewhosoevers.com. What does funding the mission mean? It means you're buying pizza, hot dogs, burgers, some skateboards to give away, and $100 best trick. And gas, right? That's pretty much what we live on. Yeah, it's pretty basic. So, yeah, join us on our mission to keep bringing the gospel. And if you're a church or you know local churches, have them contact us at thewhosoevers.com. And we want to definitely get plugged in and come to your local churches. If you go to Concrete Disciples, if you look that up, or local or SoCal skate parks, have you ever looked up those websites? It has all the skate parks.
That's it.
And it tells you the hours. It shows you even pictures of each park. Concrete Disciples, I think that's for the whole United States. And then there's like SoCal skate parks. All of them. That's what you got to get on. Let's set up a tour. We're going to do it COVID vibes. You have California broken up in colors, right? You have the purple, you have the orange, you have the green. We're going to do each COVID section.
Each section.
The pandemic best trick contest.
One section at a time.
That's it.
Are they call them sections or what are they?
Yeah, well, there's like regions, and so
Regions.
Like, yeah,
Coming soon
there's
to a
regions.
region
It's
near
like
you.
Hunger Games. Okay, we're like one region versus
One
another
at a time.
region.
Just pick them off.
23 million people in
regions.
our region.
All right. Well, I think we're at 9 seconds. Well, hey, Christina, thank you for being on the show. Daniel, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
We'll party again next weekend. We'll be live. Call in. We'll talk to you then. Peace.
This has been The Ryan Ries Show. To connect and find out more about Ryan, click on ryan-reese.com. Check us out next Saturday for The Ryan Ries Show.